We came home from going to a movie. Connor complained of a headache. We gave him a couple of ibuprofen and sent him to bed early. I mean, that's what you do. We've done that 1,000 times. 10 days later, he was gone. Right after Connor passed away, we now describe it as we were all drowning in an ocean in the middle of a storm.
You walked around dazed and confused.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to do. Our youngest son got afraid, and I feel like he felt like he was next or somebody else was next.
So while our youngest went external with all of his emotions and fears and concerns and anxiety, our oldest went internal. And he's our contemplative thinker, and he cried hard the day we left the city where Connor died and flew back to our home. And we didn't really see him cry again for a really long time. When we would walk into church, be the four of us, and I'd just be standing there crying, just trying to sing, can't sing, just crying. My oldest son would stand there with his hands lifted as high as he could put them. He was just calling out to God. My youngest was just angry, and he didn't know what to do, was agitated. And Nan would just sit and just really couldn't participate and just really couldn't go there in her heart. And so we were all sort of in the same place, but in different ways.
Have you ever returned from a trip and asked your traveling companions what they remember from the experience? You probably got a variety of different responses because different people will be impacted by life experiences in unique ways.
The same is true with our grief journeys.
In today's session, we'll hear from people whose reactions to the same loss were surprisingly different from each other. And we'll hear from people who've experienced different losses that put them on surprisingly different grief journeys. The differences in the ways we experience grief can create a whole lot of questions.
Thinking through these questions will help you better understand the types of experiences you might go through on your grief journey.
Welcome to Grief Share. Your experience of grief is connected to the relationship you had with your loved one. And this goes a long way toward explaining why your grief experience will be unique to you.
A general rule of thumb is the greater the loss, the greater the grief. So if I make a casual acquaintance at work and that person passes away, I'll be sad a little bit, but you picture a wife who lost her husband of 40 years. There's going to be deep grief and pain and sorrow and sadness and disappointment and confusion because they had 40 years together. It doesn't matter how healthy or how mature they are, they're going to struggle in the midst of that because the loss is so significant.
I grieved my sister hard. But Mark, again, because he was my husband and my one flesh, there's nothing to describe that level of loss, that level of aloneness, that level of, oh my goodness, my whole life has cratered in front of me.
I remember when my dad's dad died,
We were very sad. It was scary. But when it was over, and the funeral was done, it felt like it was just done. When my mother's parents passed away, I remember again being sad. But once the funeral was done, it was just over. I didn't process it too much. And when my sister-in-law died, I think that's just what I tried to do. But it didn't work that time. It just didn't work. It was too close, too personal, too confusing, too messy. What had always worked in the past was not going to be effective this time around.
In addition to the relationship, there are also other factors that contribute to what you're going through right now.
I remember my sister-in-law telling me, she said, "You're crying more, with your dad than you did with your grandmother." And I said, "I guess I am, because I didn't see this one coming." My grandmother, she had been in care in the hospital. The progression had been about 2 years. My father's passing was sudden, so I was not prepared.
The death that Mother had, because it was expected that it was not as traumatic for us. It was hard, but it was not as traumatic for us because we knew it was coming, and she had lived 106 years.
The next couple of factors that affect grief are more personal in nature.
Yes, the first is your stage in life. As you age, your capacity to understand and deal with tragedies will change.
And the second is the influence of your family background and the culture in which you were raised.
None of my grandparents are still living. I grieved every single one of them differently. They were spread out over the course of about a 10-year period of time. And so every one of those grieving experiences was different because I was different. If I lose a loved one today versus if I lost a loved one 5 years ago, I'm in a different place in life. My circumstances are different, my emotional makeup is different. So all of those are going to play into what's the nature of the loss.
The family culture that we live in, the social culture that we live in, the beliefs that our faith community or we personally have about what suffering or hardships mean, all of those things are going to shape the way that we do grief.
My mom lost her mother when she was 12 years old. And somewhere I think she learned how, we use the word, just suck it up. You just got to deal with it and move on. And that's how she taught us.
My wife and I have learned that we process grief differently. She has always been more emotionally expressive right from the very beginning, and I'm more reserved. Part of that comes from the way that we were raised. Karen's family is very, very open emotionally, whereas I grew up in a family where we just didn't talk about how we feel. So we grieve differently in that way. We respond differently, and it's taken time to learn that about each other and to accept that about each other.
The family in which you were raised exerts a profound influence on how you grieve. But you are also affected by the social norms of the broader culture.
The research really knows that men and women experience grief the same way. They express it differently. Women will tend to be a little bit more open about what they're feeling and their emotions. Our society allows them to cry more openly, allows them to talk about their emotions a little bit more. When men experience grief, they, I think, experience it more inward. There's a book out that we read once that says, "Women cry, men sigh."
I don't know that the grief was different between myself and my wife. How we handled it was different. She had close friends that would come and talk to her. They would cry with her. The guys that I was working with at the time weren't about sitting around crying with me, and they didn't ask me to go into details about how I was feeling. They would just simply say, "You doing okay? All right, let's go. We got to get this done."
These gender differences are certainly not hardwired in us, but they do illustrate how the culture in which you live can have a subtle but profound impact on your life. And it's good to be aware of that.
Your unique grief journey will also be shaped by your personality and the typical way you've learned to handle stress in life, what we might call your grief style.
Some of us might be external grievers. You see grief out here. It comes out in tears. It comes out in words. I just kind of wear it all over myself. It's external. It's obvious.
I'm an extrovert. I like to talk. I like to process verbally. And thankfully, my parents were very open to me just kind of telling them what I was going through. And then I had two very good friends that they were fantastic, that I would just spend lots of time just processing with them. And that was very, very helpful to me.
Some of us might be internal grievers. The way that we navigate the pain that is all around us and within us is to try to do something productive and helpful with it. And so we're caring, serving.
I know that when it comes to grief and loss, that I'm trying to figure out how can we make things as good as they can be given the circumstances. That doesn't keep me from feeling the emotion, and I don't think it's a question of trying to forestall it. I think it's just if I do that first, then maybe it frees me up to handle the emotions in my time, in my way, in a way that is healthier for me.
There's no one size fits all with grief. I remember specifically when my mother passed. I preached a message that Sunday, and the topic was just keep going. And so what I did was I just kept going. I just kept serving. But I knew if I got stuck and I stopped, I would wither in defeat and depression and sorrow and self-pity. I just kept doing what I was supposed to do, just showing up for work and serving. My mom has been gone now for 5 years. I don't have any repercussions from handling it that way. I'm good. I'm not falling apart. I didn't hit a wall later. You have to know what works for you. If you need time off, if you need a break, need time to process, take that time.
These two grief styles are probably best thought of as the two ends of a continuum. And in the middle are grievers who tend to blend both of these styles. That's probably where most of you are. But wherever you fall on the continuum, you can move forward in your grief journey.
Understanding this grief style continuum is especially important for grieving family members living under the same roof. It can help alleviate potential tensions that might arise as everyone tries to manage their grief.
My husband and I are two very different people. I'm a person of action, make a decision and get going, and he's a person of, I have to evaluate all the pros and cons for a very long time before I make a decision. It's mostly just being more patient with the fact that someone else processes things differently. And just because I do it this way doesn't mean that someone else has to do it exactly the same way.
After the miscarriages, my husband and I grieved differently. I remember him really grieving and crying when we found out. But then after that, he seemed to sort of emotionally move on. But I didn't move on. I think for him, it was go back to work, get on with life. And he didn't really want to talk about it after that. I felt pretty isolated because I wanted him to bring it up, and he didn't. And so I didn't want to bring it up. I remember at times thinking, don't you care? Later, we talked about it, and he said, he was really struggling, but didn't really have words and didn't know how to explain that to me or talk about it with people. I thought it was harder for me. And now I realize we just grieved differently.
When you take a trip, it's always a good idea to give yourself some cushion time so that you can handle any surprises along the way. Being prepared for surprises is also a good idea when it comes to your grief journey.
The most common type of surprise you're likely to face is what we call a grief ambush. A grief ambush is when some trigger you associate with your loved one prompts a sudden wave of sadness and tears.
We all get ambushed, especially in those early months, and you're not prepared for it. You're really not prepared for it. It just comes out of the blue, and different things trigger it. Sometimes things you wouldn't even think would trigger it. I have yet to pass a motorhome on the road here 6 years later that I don't instantly anchor back to my husband, Ken, because we had a motorhome. And some of our last years were spent doing a lot of things in that motorhome.
The weirdest thing, I went to a family reunion after my mother passed, and for whatever reason, I touched my mother's sister's hair, and it felt just like my mother's hair, really soft. I was definitely ambushed. Did I see that one coming? Nope. So you can't even plan for those ambushes.
One of the things that we want to get across is you never apologize for your crying, for your grieving, because tears, for one thing, they're normal. They are a gift from God. And you cannot predict your grief. You cannot control your grief. You just let it occur. And if other people are uncomfortable, so be it. This is more for you and for your adjustment and moving forward.
Much to her surprise, after her son Connor's death, the music that Nan had so enjoyed became an ambush for her. And that created a rift in how the family dealt with a significant area of their life.
Connor could sing like nobody's business. He had an amazing voice. And so it was beautiful to be at church, sitting next to him. And that was hard for me not to have him there. And music was our thing. And I didn't want to hear it. I demanded of you to not play that in front of me.
I'd have the Christian music playing, and then as soon as she got in the car, I'd turn it off because I knew that was a trigger for her. And that was such a challenging place
because that was our world together as a family.
It was hard to share those positive, good messages. We really couldn't share them, and at the same time, I wanted to respect what would trigger your deep pain. And so, there were a lot of stuck places in there.
I sat with a woman one time very early after Connor died, and I remember her taking my hand and saying, that man, that husband of yours, that is the man that you had that child with. And that is the man that you lost that child with. And that is the man that you buried that child with. And that is the man that you're grieving over that child with. And only he knows that pain. Only you know that pain together, and only you know that child together. And that is worth staying together.
Grief ambushes often occur when you face the many first times you do something by yourself that you used to do with your loved one.
The first time I went to the gas station to fill up my car, I cried because I know how to pump gas. But sitting in the gas station, I was flooded with these memories of being at the gas station with him, sitting in the car in the passenger seat while he pumped the gas, and he would run in and get me an iced tea and a bag of chips. So it was raining, and I thought, I'm gonna run in and get an iced tea and the bag of chips. And I cried the entire way, spilled the tea coming out, dropped the chips, and I was like, I'm done.
I can still remember that first night going to bed alone. And as I closed the door in my room, I remember just crying out 2 words to God, help me. help me.
The first time I went to a movie was very hard. And I went by myself. Shouldn't have.
The first year, I went to my in-laws' house, and walking into that house all by myself, just my luggage, not our luggage, it was traumatic.
Another set of firsts will be special days and holidays. So how do you prepare for all these firsts?
It's very important for people to anticipate those first events, that is the first time you go through them, to make a plan in terms of how you're going to do it.
I think a principle is the harder I know a day is going to be, the sooner I need to turn to God in the midst of that. Now, that doesn't mean to get up at 4:30 in the morning and try to do an hour-long devotion, but don't sleep in for as long as you can on Monday and go, I woke up and it's not Tuesday.
To go into that situation, to experience what that thing was for you, probably to try to do it as closely as possible to what you always had done before, so you can experience it once again, and in the process say, what part of that do I want to continue? What part of that do I think I don't have to continue?
For a lot of these firsts, a transition plan might include friends or family members. We'll have more to say about getting help from others and about planning for holidays and other special days in later sessions.
Although they might be a little embarrassing, none of these grief-related surprises are reasons for concern. They're simply part of the process you'll have to go through as you adjust to life without your loved one's presence.
Because of the personal nature of your grief experiences, it might be hard to know when you're actually making progress on your journey.
It's true. Progressing on this kind of journey is different from others you've been on. It's not easy, but in the long run, it can still be beneficial.
And a significant part of experiencing the benefit is having appropriate expectations. Here are some ways you can think about your grief that can help you more effectively gauge progress.
Going through my own great pain and suffering and loss caused me to ask different questions about how the world works and how we think about grief. And one of the things I've learned is a great misunderstanding about the process of grieving, that we think grief should be mastered. You know, we pull up our bootstraps and we're going to beat this thing. Whatever it is, however it is, we face it, we conquer it, we move past it. That language just doesn't work with grief.
I have a friend. Her name is Jody. And her son, Cody, had a brain tumor. And when Cody was 12, almost 13, he died. And about 5 years after he died, I asked Jody, what's this grief process like for you this far down the road? How has your grief journey been? And she gave me a really interesting insight. She said, there's days that I would wake up and at the very beginning, there was a fog that just filled everywhere I went. And I realized it wasn't safe for me to be outside because it's unsafe. And she said, eventually the fog would lift and just become a real overcast day. I could get outside, but everything was gloomy, everything was dark, but I could still navigate through the world. And she said eventually the overcast became partly cloudy days and sun would break through. And then there would occasionally be a day that was clear skies. Every day when I got up, I would have to check outside to see what's happening with my grief today. Some days I would be socked in because it was completely foggy. Some days I could navigate, but I should do minimal because it was a cloudy day. And then some days it was just okay. And she says, the further I get away, the more sunshiny days that I have. And so we just need to be patient with each other and patient with ourselves and allow the process to take place.
We don't master grief. We learn to live with it. We learn the lessons of it. We walk with it. We listen to it. It is never your friend. But at the very same time, it can be a teacher. So take a deep breath and recognize that you're going to walk with this.
It's like a life-altering disability. You wake up in the morning and it's there. And so you deal with grief like you deal with a severe disability. You face the hard facts, and then you just move forward and embrace it as part of life with all its brokenness and disappointment.
Embracing grief. I know that sounds funny. It's like you embrace it like a loved one. No, not like that. Embrace grief, because you have to go through it because you've loved. And now that person's gone and you just have a memory. You embrace it, then you move on.
Your grief is integral to life. And once you embrace it, then the waves of pain and grief, they begin to calm a bit. They begin to subdue. Those waves will still, I think, they will always swell up from time to time. But when you have survived the storm, then the swells become gentle reminders that although the pain persists and you will carry it with you, that God is still there. And that gives you the confidence that you will survive.
Thank you for being with us today. Last time we shared with you the commitment that your Grief Share leaders ask of you. It's significant, but so is the value of being a part of this group. So please continue with an initial commitment to attend at least 3 sessions to get a feel for what Grief Share has to offer.
Because grief does present you with a number of challenges, emotionally, physically, socially, and spiritually. Having support and some guidance can really benefit you on your journey. Of course, we can't predict exactly what you will experience because your grief journey will be unique, but we can help you deal with the most common challenges that grieving people face.
In addition to the support of the people in your group and the instruction you receive from the videos each session, we also want to tell you about some more resources from Grief Share. At griefshare.org, you'll find some extra videos on the types of issues grievers face. We offer these free of charge. So we hope you'll consider these resources.
Is Grief Share helping you navigate through your grief? Do you have a friend or family member who you think might benefit from attending this group? Why not invite them to come next week? Ask your group leader about how you might go about extending an invitation to a loved one. As you face the daily emotions and life changes that come with grief, it can be hard to remember daily tasks and responsibilities. To organize your thoughts and your day, check out the 4 tips in your participant guide in the mini article, Scattered Brain, How to Stay Focused. Looking for more help for your journey? Visit griefshare.org to watch bonus videos from both experts and testimonials, as well as helpful articles and additional resources to help you manage your grief. By the way, are you enjoying your daily Grief Share emails yet? If you haven't, be sure to log in to Grief Share and sign up to receive encouraging emails filled with ideas and tips on how to continue making progress on your grief journey. Just visit griefshare.org today.
After he died, my Saturdays were just me.
They are there with their husbands and their wives, and I was by myself.
I had no purpose, nowhere to go, nothing to do.
And unfortunately, I turned to alcohol to ease the pain.
It's really easy to sit at home and say, I just don't want to deal with the world.
Thank you once again for sharing your grief journey with us today. We look forward to talking with you next time.